Will the Committee of Supply please come to order? This section of the Committee of Supply will now resume consideration of the estimates for the Department of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation. Questioning for the department will proceed in a global manner. The floor is now open for questions. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Chair. I'm glad to be back for another day of opportunity to ask the Minister important questions about the future of our economy in the province, job creation and job market, along with economic growth that we've heard from the Minister. We have questions around the budget. So I'm hoping that through today we'll be able to get some more clear answers for questions that we have. Picking up from where we left off last time, we've heard a couple comments come from both this Minister and the Premier. Specifically last week, the Premier doubled down again and claimed by 2030 Manitoba could be shipping LNG from Churchill. Now we know to do that we'd need to build a natural gas pipeline over hundreds of kilometers of muskeg, erect an LNG terminal in Hudson's Bay, build a new breakwater to protect the pipeline, expand the port, and figure out a way to move that LNG through the ice. There would also need to be significant upgrades to the railroad and the harbour itself, and somehow obtain all the engineering, environmental, and regulatory approvals to do so, all in less than 4 years. I think many Manitobans are wanting to see the clear picture on that because it's sounding less like an aspiration and more like a delusion. Yet, here's what the Premier had to say the other day. If we get private sector investment, and I quote, if we get private sector investment and we can deliver on the Prime Minister's timeline of LNG out of Churchill by 2030. So, I'm going to start by giving the Minister another shot at answering something I asked him when we left during our last session here. A simple question and just looking for a dollar figure. How much committed private sector investment has the Minister raised to date to make the Premier's Churchill dream come true?
Thank you, Member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. And I appreciate the opportunity from member opposite for, again, having this time during estimates to talk about the projects that we're doing, talk about how we're continuing to grow our economy here in Manitoba, make sure that those initiatives and steps we're taking are pretty clear for Manitobans, and make sure that we're doing the best we can to answer questions for the members of the opposition. As we begin today, I also just wanted to introduce a staff person who I didn't get a chance to introduce previously. They weren't here joining us for the first time. Amy Thiessen, Executive Director of Finance. Thank you for being with us today. So in terms of Churchill, yeah, this is a significant project. Get a chance to talk about it at different events and occasions, and certainly be working alongside private industry, different levels of government, including First Nation, municipal, federal governments, Métis governments as well, on putting forward this project. The good thing about this is that there's interest from all those levels. It's also even better to hear that there's interest from international governments and players as well, who see the potential of having LNG through the Port of Churchill really be a huge opportunity for them. You know, places in Europe who have perhaps view an unreliable or unstable supply of LNG or energy sources are looking for opportunities to diversify and to strengthen their own energy sovereignty and energy position. And for them, that one opportunity could be in the form of more energy and more LNG coming from Canada. So those are some of the aspects that we're looking at in terms of international opportunities to ensure that we have the right market for products that will come out of Port of Churchill, including LNG. So we're working with stakeholders right across the globe. In terms of dollars that have gone into Churchill, well, certainly I can point to the amount that we funded as government, both provincially and jointly with the federal government, that have combined to the tune of $262.5 million over 5 years. And plus, on top of it, the $10 million that we committed to in this year's budget for $10 million Churchill Catalyst Fund to really help us seize on those private sector opportunities to advance the Port of Churchill. So I think those are some of the funding that I would point the member to. And having said that, we're working in a really strong, concrete way with private sector partners to move forward with the project of both enhancing the rail line, improving the port, making sure that there are reliable infrastructure assets there that meet the needs of the customer base, both domestically and for global partners, and at the same time looking at that energy project and what would it take to actually get LNG up there. And members highlighted a number of initiatives and steps that would take to actually have that become a reality there. I'm not sure if the member mentioned liquefaction, but that would certainly be part of the process as well at some point along the route, and certainly understanding what it takes to have that all out is the work that we're doing right now. And so as we work through the project on our side as a provincial organization, working in partnership with AGG, who is operating the port right now, and that's Arctic Gateway Group. We're currently shipping goods out of there, and we're doing the resupply missions, for example, to our neighbors to the north in Nunavut. As we continue to work side along private partners and even other Western provinces who are interested for their own economic benefit, the advancement of the Port of Churchill. We all align and see that there is a lot of benefit for doing this project and moving it forward. We're making our investment, working with other public sector partners to do this, and we're working very closely with private sector partners to advance the project, get the right types of investment in there, to make sure it can happen in a good way.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Lavrandri.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And this is exactly a prime example of exactly why I'm getting discouraged in this process, the estimates process in this committee, because it's an important process, part of our legislative engagement, together the opposition representing the voices of Manitobans outside of the government, to get answers from the government in specific departments. And here again today, we're kicking off without any answers. So my question specifically was around private investment. I think, first of all, the Premier and this minister have portrayed Churchill as the silver bullet, the answer, the single largest answer to transform Manitoba from an have-not province to a have province, a province that's receiving nearly $30 billion in federal transfer. And when asked, this is the answer that has been given, is that Churchill is the future of our economy. Again, on our side of the House, the opposition, or your business community across Manitoba, and Manitobans in general, I'd say Canadians in general, aren't opposed and see value in the plan of building Churchill and the economic benefit that is going to have to our entire country. But we need to see what that plan is, and everybody is far more concerned about what that's going to look like and how it's going to come together, more so than they're really interested in. They're concerned about how much of their tax dollars will go into it. But every single Manitoban, I would say, realizes that this will not be built just on the backs of taxpayers. This isn't a build it and they will come project. This is something that involves serious private investment. This needs suppliers, whether it be natural gas being liquefied and shipped across the world, whether that be potash from Saskatchewan, oil from Alberta, wheat from the Red River Valley. This needs a partnership with private sector, and we, as all Manitobans, would like to know what that partnership looks like today. Who has signed up to say that we're an oil and gas company and we're looking at building a pipeline? We are a grain terminal and we're looking to partner with the Port of Churchill to get wheat shipped to Europe, or whether it be in a neighboring province saying that our resources need to be exported through that port. Without that, like I said, this is no more than a pipe dream. So with that clarification, I'm not really concerned about, in this question anyways, what the taxpayer dollars are that have been committed or already spent. I'm looking at what is the private investment in actual product that will be shipped out of that port. Not hypotheticals, but actual examples of negotiations that are taking place. Like if we're talking 2030, that something's going to be shipped out of Port of Churchill, time's ticking. It's taking this government years to build a campaign promise addition to an emergency room, like years. We're talking 3 years of a campaign promise, and it's still not open. And you're talking a nation-building project that's going to wean Canada off $30 billion, $30 billion with a B, of transfer payments from the federal government, and we have no examples of what those partnerships are. So once again, I'd like to know what the private commitment is to this project.
Thank you, member for La Vérendrye. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you very much, Chair. I really appreciate the question from the member opposite. You know, his concern for the Port of Churchill and the progress there is, I think, is important, right? To show how interested Manitobans are in the Port of Churchill. We know from recent surveys that, you know, roughly 80% of Manitobans are supportive of the Port of Churchill and investment in Port of Churchill. We know that more than half of Canadians are supportive of the Port of Churchill and investments in the Port of Churchill. And so we're going to take our lead from Manitobans, listen to them, and we're going to continue to invest and work up the great plans that we think will help to advance the project, meeting the quick timelines that we are trying to look at. I also think that when we are doing the work, we should also recognize that even though the member opposite might have maybe an approach that is kind of a bit of a naysayer, I would say, you know, calling into question the credibility of the work that's taking place. And I don't want to necessarily critique that approach or line of thinking or questioning, rather to say the positive side of it, that in Manitoba, we can do big things. We know exactly how to get big things done. In fact, we have a track record of getting big things done. We know how to tackle challenges, whether that's through flood or last year where we dealt with the worst wildfire season in the province's history. We know how to handle it and protect as many Manitobans as possible. You know, it wasn't too long ago, maybe 20 years ago, when Manitobans said Centerport was a wild idea. When I remember a certain opposition conservative government that said Centerport's a wild idea. You know, Premier Dewar, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. But now we've got over 1,000 businesses thriving in Centerport, bringing in over $1 billion of economic activity. This is a great opportunity to show that, yeah, sometimes there are big ideas. When you work together, when you work hard, work with a lot of people who can roll up the sleeves like I know Manitobans can do, you can get big things done. So that's the same spirit that we're going in with working together to get the Port of Churchill built and developed. The other aspect I want to bring to this is certainly as we have the conversations that we are absolutely seeking more private sector dollars and investment into the Port of Churchill. I don't want that narrative to be out there. We know this project is going to move forward with some public sector support, but also definitely 100% with private sector support. And so we are absolutely working with private sector along those lines to develop the port in real and meaningful ways. I'll just give the member opposite one example. Is that, you know, part of the work that our government did to shepherd through conversations to open the door for more engagement, we know that the work our work as government led Arctic Gateway Group to build a MOU of understanding with the Port of Antwerp. And this is one of Europe's largest ports. It's one of the most diversified ports. And it also aims to establish a diversified trade corridor. At Antwerp Bruges, the port there, they manage 300 million tons of cargo just per year. And so not only does it make it one of Europe's largest ports, it makes it one of the largest ports globally. And so the MOU signed between Arctic Gateway Group at the Port of Churchill and the Port in Antwerp now allows us to build a framework of an economic corridor and linking their significant economic partners with our port. I think that's one of the avenues that will lead to more investment, more private sector investment into the Port of Churchill. And so as we continue to work alongside First Nations, Métis, through our Crown Indigenous Corporation, as we continue to work with the federal government, municipal governments, private sector partners, we're going to make sure that we also have an eye to global partners in the private sector who can help to shepherd along and speed up the advancement of the Port of Churchill, developing the port rail line, and the possibility and the work that we're advancing to see an LNG go through the Port of Churchill as well. So those are some of the aspects that we're working with, and I hope it addresses some of the members' concerns around private sector involvement with the project.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The minister has a true talent to evaporate time. It's quite amazing. It is quite amazing. I'd just like to recognize that and compliment the minister that he's able to take something very serious and make time disappear in front of our eyes. As I was watching the clock, I felt, wow, it's like time is just evaporating before us. So that's a talent. But again, unfortunately, we weren't able to get any numbers or any projections on when we can foresee this project happening. And I don't want to dwell on it, but I think it's really important that when we're being or not we, the government is being as lofty as they are in the future outlook on the reality and timelines around when this port is going to be operational and contributing. There's a lot that can be done to grow our economy. And each and every time, whether it be media, opposition, or business community, and just your average Manitoban stating concern to this government on what exactly is the answer that's going to set us apart in Manitoba or set us on a path to prosperity in the future. And each and every time now we're being told that the Port of Churchill is that answer. And like I said earlier, we can accept that and we can support that, but we need to start seeing the plan. When we talk 2030, we're less than 4 years away from a timeline that both the Minister and the Premier have set out, that we'd actually start to see some action out of the Port of Churchill. So since I won't get an answer as to what private investment has been engaged, what industries are in discussion, or anything around what products will be supplied to the Port of Churchill, maybe my question is better positioned to be when Manitobans will see the Port of Churchill providing a net contribution to our economy. So this is the answer to wean us off of $30 billion of transfer payments and supposedly growing our economy to that extent, since we're not really seeing any clear answers from the minister today as far as dollar figures go or a plan of any sort, including any type of industries. I think my question may be more easily answered as to what year will we start to see the Port of Churchill being a net contribution to the province of Manitoba.
Thank you, Member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank the member first question. I love talking about the Port of Churchill, so I love to get these questions. In fact, earlier today, I was at the Winnipeg Arctic Summit, the Fort Garry Hotel. I spoke extensively about Churchill during my remarks. And in that room, we had a variety of people. We had Chris Avery from Arctic Gateway Group. We had people from Thompson Airport Authority, people from a wide range and variety of sectors, manufacturing and supply chain advocates, people from the north, people from Indigenous backgrounds. And during my comments during my remarks, one of the things I reflected on and shared with the crowd was when I had a chance to go up to Churchill, and the Minister of Northern Relations and Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures was with me, and the Premier there. And what I remarked about was how we think about the Port of Churchill and its impact. While advancing an LNG project at the Port of Churchill will have significant impacts for the Manitoba economy, for the Western Canadian economy, including Saskatchewan and Alberta, it will also have undoubtedly positive impacts for our reliable partners that we would want to sell this LNG to, like folks in Germany, for example, who might feel a strained relationship from some of the current suppliers that they might be currently sourcing LNG from, like, for example, Russia. Additionally, with the Strait of Hormuz, I'm sure it's no surprise to the member opposite, with the Strait of Hormuz closed and having obviously impacts on global supply chains, that the need for more energy reliability is something that is very highly valued in this moment. And so as we do our part as Manitobans to help play a role in solving some of these large global energy challenges, these large global supply chain challenges, as we do that in a way that also benefits our GDP here in Manitobans, and benefiting the real lives of Manitobans in the south who want to export, but in the north who want to see real employment, my mind turns to my trip with Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures to the Port of Churchill, where not only did we get to see the port, but what we got to see was people, young people, working there and learning and building up their skills. We saw them learning to build sheds and houses, build up their carpentry and woodworking skills. The next generation of people who are looking and seeking for employment. Now, the benefit of Port of Churchill that you're asking about in your question, when will we see a net benefit, can be measured in these solving and playing a role in solving these global challenges. It can be measured in ways that help to grow our Canadian economy. It could be measured in ways that help to grow our Manitoba economy. It can also be measured in how do we give more opportunities for that young person who's developing their skills in the north, who wants to have an opportunity to work, have a career, build a life with economic success in northern Manitoba. It can be measured in a way that says, yeah, you know what? As a government, our responsibility extends to helping make sure there's enough economic activity and opportunities for people in Churchill, for people along the Bay Line communities, for people in Gillam, for people in Thompson, for people throughout the north who want to have more opportunities, more access to the economy. And so we think about this in many small and big ways. And so certainly for us, we're working very hard to understand how and when we can get every opportunity for those people to have more opportunities to work in Manitoba, supporting that port opportunity. And so, as big as we think our role it could be to help solve these global challenges, as big as that is, it's as big for that one individual who will have more opportunity. It's life-changing, it's career-changing, it's generational changing in many respects. For that one person to have a significant opportunity. And at the same time, I want to make sure the member knows that we're already seeing success out of the Port of Churchill. In fact, Hudbay shipped over 18,000 tons of critical minerals through the Port of Churchill over the last 2 years. And so we have this massive eye to the future for the Port of Churchill success, but we know we're already seeing success right here and now.
Thank you, Minister. A gentle reminder to all members to put your questions and answers through the chair, please. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, my question was around when we would see a positive net contribution as a result of the workings of the Port of Churchill, and I didn't limit that to products that we're as a province able to sell through there or anything else. This could be as broad as indirect jobs that are being provided to the province, but unfortunately, other than talking about the future that this project could hold for people in the north, we didn't hear any specifics around that. The question was, what year would we see a positive net contribution? And we're seeing benefits from products that are being shipped out of Churchill today, is what the minister had said. But I'd be fairly certain that the minister would not be able to answer or support his answer by saying that it's providing a positive net contribution to our economy. So maybe I'll simplify it even further because we don't seem to be getting an answer. But the minister had mentioned that he was there with the Minister of Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures, and they looked around the port and the community. So I'll simplify my question even more because I'm trying to really see the full picture on the feasibility of a 2030 plan for the Port of Churchill. So my question to the minister would be, did he see a port that looks like it would be transformational to the economy of our province within the next 4 years?
Thank you, member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you, Chair. I want to commend the folks in Churchill and thank them for their hospitality and for the good work that they're doing. I also want to say, the member opposite should maybe familiarize himself with Churchill as a whole, right? Quite frankly, it already is a net benefit for Manitoba. The amount of tourism dollars that come out of Churchill is remarkable. Quite frankly, if you look at what international players might know about Manitoba, they might know of Winnipeg as the capital, and they might know that Churchill is the polar bear capital of the world. And so it's remarkable to see the international presence there. Tourists from around the world come into Winnipeg, fly up to Churchill. Some take the train up to Churchill as well, and get a chance to see the sights in the natural habitat. Get a chance to go there during polar bear season and try to catch a glimpse of a polar bear. Go there and visit the whales and see they're remarkable, who are going through the Hudson's Bay and Churchill River. Even go during the wintertime and get a chance to check out the Northern Lights. And so I encourage all Manitobans, if you get a chance to do that, all Canadians, anyone around the world who might be tuning in today, including the member opposite who's right here, go to Churchill. It's a great place to be. I think members on his team have been there as well, who can attest to how beautiful Churchill is. And I think there's no question, no doubt in my mind that already Churchill is a net benefit and positive contributor into our provincial economy. And we know there's some great tourism operators throughout the north and throughout Churchill. And I want to commend all of them for the work they do, including those who do it from that lens of sharing their knowledge and experience as some of the first peoples, in the region, both from a First Nation and from an Inuit background. I think we know that it's a massive undertaking to be in that space. So we already know that there's a huge, massive impact to our provincial GDP through Churchill. Now we can build on that. That's exactly what we're seeking to do through our Port of Churchill Plus, as we continue to invest our dollars and with working alongside the federal government to invest in that rail line, getting that improved. And when I was up there, I got a chance to see the port, and I understand that even since I've been there, there's already been private sector investment to improve the port infrastructure, whether that's the dredging, whether that's the port itself, whether that's the storage capacity at the port. All has been improved since I've been there. I've already said that shipments of critical minerals are going out of the Port of Churchill. It was about 18,000 tons of Hudbay's minerals have gone out of the Port of Churchill in the last 2 years. And we're going to continue, and we're no doubt that's going to grow. And so I think the narrative the member opposite is trying to put forward today is just completely off base. It's one that discounts a ton of work that's happened over years to build up the economy in Churchill, not only through tourism, but through resupply missions to Nunavut. There are actually even cruise ships that dock in the Port of Churchill as well. And tourists come and stop by Churchill. So there's a lot of activity going on right now. In fact, that tourism generates $99.8 million annually to Manitoba's GDP. And so we know that there's a massive benefit for Churchill, its current existence. We're aiming to work collaboratively with partners across the sector, from municipal governments to First Nations and Métis governments, working with the federal government as well through their major projects office. And we heard it directly from the Prime Minister himself, who said it's a priority. We heard it directly from the Minister of Finance, who was here in the province earlier this week, who said Churchill's a great idea. He supports the Port of Churchill. And as we continue to advance this project in a collaborative and real way, we will certainly be having an eye to ensuring that it has a benefit for all Manitobans.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair, there you have it. I asked about what the positive net contribution to the province would be from Churchill, whether or not the minister, when he was there, with a colleague minister, saw a transformational port transformational to the economy of our province. And similar to the last time when the minister went off at extent on a space mission to the moon and talking about rockets and astronauts, today we're hearing about polar bears. So, everyone can agree that we have a great tourism industry in Manitoba, and how much exactly that contributes to the provincial economy. And the minister stated it, $99.8 million, and much of that is thanks to our previous PC government's partnership model with the 96-4 model that was brought forward by Travel Manitoba to reinvest into tourism, and that's what really had kick-started the Churchill tourism. But we don't see the net positive net contribution that bringing up that comparison has for our economy and has for transforming our economy from a have-not to a have. In an earlier question, the minister said that they've committed $262 million to the Port of Churchill project, another $10 million Churchill Catalyst Fund. So we're talking, roughly $270 million, a sizable amount of money, but we know that that's a drop in the bucket in comparison to the billions of dollars that this project's going to take. And then spoke to how we're already seeing a positive net contribution to the province because of the $99.8 million of tourism, which has nothing to do with the Port of Churchill, contributes to our province. Well, if you have a $99.8 million revenue as a result of a $270 million contribution, that is not a net positive benefit to the province. But I think we will move on. We're not getting an answer as to what the Port of Churchill looks like, when we're going to see it contributing to our province. And these are all things that we're not skeptical on or critical of. We want to see a plan, and we're simply not seeing that. So something that the minister brought up today, and we left off the last day that we were together, this committee, was the Manitoba Crown Indigenous Corporation, and I'd asked, where it was, what it was, and why we haven't actually seen any numbers around it, or how it's made, or what involvement it'll have with the Port of Churchill. So could the minister please tell Manitobans why this entity has been obviously announced on numerous occasions? They've established a board, so there are clearly costs involved and money being spent, but it does not have the proper costing or details in this year's budget. So I'd ask the minister why.
Thank you, member. Can the member please clarify if he is referring to another bill which is put forward by Minister for Natural Resources and Indigenous Futures?
Number 12, Bill.
Bill 12. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you, Honourable Chair, for that clarification. So what I'm looking at is what involvement the Crown Indigenous Corporation will have on the Port of Churchill project.
So we are discussing the estimates for the Department of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation. At this platform, we are not entertaining questions about a bill which is on the floor of the legislature. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm not, I'm not wanting to debate any details as far as what's in the bill itself, but if we're not able to discuss anything around the Crown Indigenous Corporation, it's unfortunate because that's a large part of basically every aspect of what the minister has brought forward for the plan of their budget this year and future projects for the province. It's been outlined on a number of occasions that the Crown Indigenous Corporation is going to be part of all major projects for the province. So not to be able to speak anything about it, like I said, is unfortunate. But we can move on from that, and I'll move on to the trade work that has been done, trade work done outside of our country, and the trade rep that this government has hired to represent our province in the United States specifically, and that being Richard Madden. So I'd like to ask the minister, since obviously being the minister responsible for trade, I would say that should have been under his direction that the trade rep was hired. And I'd like to ask on behalf of Manitobans why Richard Madden was chosen as the trade rep for our province.
Thank you, member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation.
Thank you, Chair. I want to, in the previous question, the member tried to ask, I want to address some of the comments that he made before getting to the comments about our U.S. Washington rep, who is, representing us here in Manitoba. The member opposite, I guess maybe had some issue with my, commentary in our previous encounter, that complaining that it was off script, talking about the incredible mission where we had a Canadian representative going to the moon on the Artemis 2 mission, and complaining that we talk about something that inspires Manitobans. In fact, I've heard literally from a young person who is always knew they were going to pursue engineering and is now thinking about going into aerospace engineering because of what they've seen as part of the Artemis mission. So this could be another great leader in our aerospace sector in Manitoba as a result of this. And at the same time, in the same question block, we had a comment from the member opposite criticizing polar bears. Shocking. Polar bears are incredible. Not only for their, the majestic animals that they are, but for the importance that they represent for First Nations and Indigenous communities in the north, but also for the economic drivers that they play, the economic role they play in attracting tourists from around the globe. So it seems really curious to me that the member opposite would spend time in estimates here out of the blue, even though I hadn't brought it up, criticizing an inspirational global space mission which had a Canadian on it who's wearing a patch designed by a Manitoban, and then out of the blue criticizing polar bears? Very curious line of questioning from member opposite, but I digress. So I'll move on and focus on the questions the member is seeking to get more clarity on, so that we can ensure the Manitobans of all walks of life from every region get a clear understanding of how we are approaching growing our economy in the multifaceted ways in which we do. And of course, as we know, and member opposite should know, Manitobans would know that over 70% of our exports go to the United States of America. On a given year, that's roughly 72, 73, 74, could be around that ballpark of exports that go to the United States of America. And so for us, having someone who can represent our interests as a province in the United States of America is really important. Someone who can actually go there and be there and understand what it's like to be in Washington. Someone who has experience on Capitol Hill and has a network of contacts. It's really important. And not only did we find someone who has that network of contacts, decades-long experience working in Washington, has a Rolodex, I don't know if it's a physical one or a virtual Rolodex of contacts to reach out and advocate for Manitobans, we finally have a person. Now it's a stark contrast, I want to be clear with Manitobans, it's a stark contrast from what we saw previously, where the former government made a decision, I think a short-sighted decision, to pull out our representatives out of the United States, with making sure that we didn't have that voice on the table to represent Manitoba's interests. We don't see other jurisdictions do that. We don't see Saskatchewan or Alberta take that course of action that the former government here decided to withdraw themselves and insulate themselves from a global economy. No, we didn't want to make that same mistake that members opposite did in their previous time in government. So yeah, it's really important for us to shepherd and foster a positive relationship. And it's even more important now, given that we're having such trade tension, with tariffs being brought on by the Trump administration. Advocating for why it's important to have a healthy trading relationship with Canada and with Manitoba specifically is important. So that's what our Washington representative does for Manitoba. It helps connect businesses with with important stakeholders, both on the government side and business-to-business relationships. And so our representative was chosen because he's got that long experience working in Washington, that network of contacts, and is the right person who has knowledge about Washington and Manitoba who can advance our interests.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. My question is, did Richard Madden have any experience in trade or commerce? Any experience whatsoever in his professional career in the past? Any experience in trade and commerce, and would the minister be able to list his experiences?
Thank you, Member. Minister for Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Well, thank you, Honourable Speaker. I certainly think it's important to be asking about trade and relationships, as it is a key part of our economy. Whether you're talking about agriculture, manufacturing, they all export. Aerospace sector, life sciences are key exporters in our province. Critical minerals and other natural resource products get exported. And so it's important for us to talk about and understand how we can maintain and improve our relationship with our largest trading partner. On top of that, I think it's also important that we acknowledge the impacts that this moment is having, both into the landscape of the tariff policy under the White House that is straining that trade relationship, that is making it more challenging to do business for many Manitoba businesses. It's also important for us to acknowledge the CUSMA, the USMCA review that's happening, and how we can be putting our best foot forward in terms of advocating both with our Canadian federal government in terms as they go into those conversations with the United States, and also at the same time have a voice for Manitoba and the politicians in Washington, senators, Congress people, but also at the state level with governors and state officials. And so part of our Washington rep, Richard Madden's role is to do that political legwork that is very beneficial to enhancing our position as Manitobans. As many products get exported, there are also many products that get exported after they cross the border many times, such as the hog industry. Members opposite might be well aware that hog might cross the border half a dozen times before it actually makes it to market. And so it's important for us to understand that that's a very integrated file, an integrated products that we export out of Manitoba. And so having that relationship on the political level is very important. And I think even now more than ever, where we see the Trump administration have the type of tone and control over a lot of that happens in Washington in the US, it's important to be speaking that political language. And our rep, Mr. Madden, has that ability to speak that language. Being in Washington for so long and having that experience, not only the contacts, not only the people who we can call up and say, let me just chat and tell you about Manitoba really quick and get you a better understanding of what we do, who we are, but to understand how to communicate to those people in an effective way is what he brings to the table. It's that knowledge, that skill set, those connections, and that ability to parse through the system and speak the language in Washington and specifically of the Trump administration is what is valuable and what is the most challenging part. And so over the course of his work to understand the political system in Washington and advocate for Manitoba, Richard's been actively meeting with leaders on both sides of the border. He's been working with not only Democrats but Republicans, and he's advancing our interests. At the same time, he's providing some strategic advice to our business community here in Manitoba on the USMCA, the CUSMA review. He has ensured that the business community in Manitoba has been staying connected. He's had many visits, tours, meetings with business community here to support and advance our interests, and none of least is in the pork industry, and so he's done a significant amount of work there. He's helped steward at meetings with Senator Murkowski and Governor Dunleavy of some of our neighbors here. He's ensured that we have had presence in events and conferences in various parts of the United States, offering opportunities for Manitoba to showcase our story and what we have to offer. This is the type of representation that is actually making a meaningful difference in the lives of Manitobans and our business community, and certainly is working to advance our interests. And so I want to make it clear that that's exactly what he brings to the table, some of that experience, ability to speak the language, and we're already seeing benefits of it.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Lavrendery.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So basically that didn't give us any clarification on what his trade and commerce experiences have been. Didn't really hear any specific trade or commerce experience whatsoever. Anything that relates to trade and commerce. As a reporter that's able to talk to government officials is what I heard from that response. So maybe I'd like to see if the minister could explain to the committee here today and Manitobans what Mr. Madden's specific job description is. What is it that the minister and the premier, the government, what has been outlined to Mr. Madden as his specific job description? What are we paying him specifically to do, and what are the expected results? So a specific job description is what I'm looking for here today, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
The Washington, D.C. office, the role there will work to develop relationships with U.S. lawmakers, industry leaders, trade officials, to promote strong ties with Manitoba and ensure that Manitoba interests are protected in high-level trade negotiations like the renewed Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. We also know that the role there is to ensure that we have those strong relationships with key lawmakers, key U.S. lawmakers, and industry leaders and trade officials. Again, those relationships are to promote more durable ties and strong and prosperous links between Manitoba and the United States. The role, and Richard is also working to ensure Manitoba's interests are protected in bilateral economic relations, including high-level trade negotiations. Like I mentioned, those renewal discussions between the Canada, United States, and Mexico agreement. So I think that kind of gives a summary of the description of the role. And I think it also describes why someone who has the ability to have a strong Rolodex, have that ability to speak the language of Washington and speak the language of the Trump administration is critically important to the role. I think it's a very strong person to be in that role, and he's finding success already. And so as he continues to work on advancing our interests as a province, certainly by networking more with political figures in Washington and throughout in the U.S., he also plays a role in giving us advice to our business community and strengthening his knowledge. Obviously, someone who spent a lot of time in Manitoba, he's familiar, and over the course of his time in that role, he's certainly become even more familiar and gained a depth of knowledge of what Manitoba has to offer and strengthened his ability to network within our own business community, our own exporters, and has been a strong advocate. There's many folks around our province who would attest to their connections with Richard and their ability to leverage his role and his presence to advance their interests as Manitoba businesses. And that's exactly why he's a person who's well suited to be in that role and to find success in that role.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So from that, I understand that basically Richard Madden's job description, what is expected of him by this minister and Manitoba's government is to hang out in Washington, take some meetings, make himself seen, and make himself known. Nowhere did I see any expectation of actual results, but that leads me to my next question for committee to understand what Mr. Madden's current salary is and allowed expenses.
Thank you, Member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation.
Thank you very much, Chair. I thank the member opposite for his questions that go to advance our initiatives to strengthen our position in the global trade landscape. We know between 70 and 75% of our exports in a given year go to the United States, and so it's continued important for us to have that strong trading relationship. Given by the questions I'm getting from the member opposite, I'm wondering, does he not support us having a strong relationship with the United States? We certainly see members from his party, have rhetoric like they wish they were the 51st state, or that we would, sell ourselves to the Americans. We see it online occasionally from members of his caucus. We even have times when the leader of the opposition, your leader, makes comments like, "Hey, these tariffs. Oh, thank you, Trump, for those tariffs." I can't believe, it's kind of shocking to the Manitoba business community that's been so greatly impacted by the negative impacts of the tariffs that in that moment when it's such a threat, a year ago, that the leader of the opposition would think it's such a good idea to say, hey, I'm going to thank Donald Trump for his tariffs that are having such a negative impact on our national but also provincial economy and businesses. Now, I wonder what the leader of the opposition's response is to the many Manitobans and Canadians whose jobs might have been impacted as a result of the tariffs. I wonder what his response is to why he was thanking him for the tariffs. I think it's really irresponsible. I think it was also irresponsible for the former government to remove our Washington representatives and remove the fact that we had a person who had already been up to speed with the ongoings in Washington and the United States if it wasn't for the short-sighted decision of the former government. And so, I think those are the sort of things that make us really shake our head when it comes to their approach. And so, I look at those decisions, I look at the questioning here today, and I can't help but wonder, is it their intention to set our economy behind? Would they rather have us not have a rep in Washington and pull that out again, as they did once before? It's their track record. They've done it once. They've closed down the office there in Washington once before. Are they going to do it again? Is that what their plan is and suggests? I'm judging by the questions here today, maybe it is. Maybe it's something else. I mean, we've heard the members opposite wish they were a 51st state, and we know they've said things like they're thanking for the tariffs, and so certainly we've heard all this rhetoric, and it makes us really question what their motivation is when it comes to this issue. We've heard even in question period, lots of opportunities for them to denounce the tariff approach of Donald Trump and to denounce the approach that his global policy on tariffs is wreaking havoc on the global economy, including the Canadian economy and including the Manitoban economy. But yet members opposite haven't taken that opportunity to denounce Trump in that way. And so it's curious if rather, instead of supporting Manitoba businesses, the members opposite would rather support Donald Trump's efforts. It's really strange. And so I think those facts and those aspects have a lot of Manitoba industries worried and concerned about the rhetoric that they hear and the sincerity of the members opposite. So I'll let member opposite reflect on those comments as he has an opportunity to speak in his next chance. And whether he wants to clearly say what his position is on Donald Trump, perhaps, maybe he will, maybe he won't. We'll let Manitobans decide on that. But certainly when it comes to our Washington rep, who's doing a great job of connecting with policy leaders, business leaders, both on the U.S. and Canadian side of the border, helping to strengthen our position as Manitobans with our largest trading partner. We know that he's been doing good work. And certainly, we also know that his position is very valuable because of the role that he plays in the networks and connections that he has. So to answer the member's question, His salary is $387,000.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Lever-Andrey.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Wow, has this been disappointing? It was disappointing the previous 2 days, but this is even more disappointing. We had 5 minutes of preamble to give an unclear answer. 387,000 for a trade representative in Washington, so we don't know if that's in U.S. funds or Canadian, which is 34% difference. And I clearly asked what the allowable expenses along with that would be, and what those expenses would add up to. But I'll remind the minister that that the purpose of this committee, as well as my role, it's my right, and not only my right, it's my responsibility to Manitobans to be critical of what the government is spending all of our tax dollars on. So that's how our democratic system in this Manitoba legislature is structured, so that official opposition has that obligation to Manitobans, and definitely to the Manitobans that didn't elect this government, but all Manitobans in general. So that is technically the purpose of my role, and it's the obligation of government to give clear answers as to where money is being spent. And the purpose of this committee, the Estimates Committee, is for me, who my obligation to Manitobans is to be critical of government expenditure. So the purpose is that the minister's staff, who's with him here today, a group of them have the budget in detail in front of them, and it's the responsibility of the minister to provide the details that I ask on behalf of all Manitobans. So the minister, I understand through his preamble to the last answer, is defensive to why I would be critical around the role of our trade representative, or this government's trade representative. I'm not saying that Mr. Madden was the wrong choice. I'm not saying that he isn't providing value to the province. I'm just questioning for Manitobans what exactly he was hired to do, the outline of that, because this isn't the minister's money. These are Manitobans' money. This isn't the money of the department staff that the minister has. These are funds that are held, with the responsibility to show the value and also the transparency to all Manitobans. So it is my obligation to be critical of the management of his department. And although he may feel that it's me being directly critical, or our party's criticism to them doing a poor job, we want to know what the job is that they're doing. And in this specific question, I had asked what the salary was in Canadian dollars, as well as the allowable expenses for Mr. Madden fulfilling his role in Washington. And since I know there's going to be 5 minutes of preamble before I get an answer, I'm going to load that up a little bit more. And I'd like to know how that's changed, if it's changed, and if those are the same amounts that are budgeted for this year in the budget. So he's now going into the second budget year. What exactly is it? $387,000 even Steven, and that's it? Canadian funds, you just stroke them a check and move on? Or what is the obligation of Manitoba taxpayers?
Thank you, member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Thank you. So, appreciate the question from member opposite. I appreciate the question from member opposite, and I served in the role as critic for 4 years, so thank you for explaining the role. I certainly want to clearly explain to Manitobans the cost of ensuring that we have a strong representative there. The figure that I provided for the member in my previous answer was in US dollars, and has no change to the budget, and that includes his allowables for hospitality. Additionally, I think it's important to note that our role is Manitoba is to make sure we have not only strong trading relationships, but with strong trading partners and strong trading opportunities for Manitoba companies. And so not only do we strengthen our relationship with the United States, our largest trading partner, but we're not, as the saying is, putting all of our eggs in one basket. No, we want to diversify. We want to have a diversified economy. We're fortunate in Manitoba to have one of the more diversified economies in the country. Strong agricultural base, advanced manufacturing, aerospace, life sciences, natural resources, energy, among many others. And as we continue to advance and grow those diverse economies, we want to see diverse partners around the world. So things like our export support program, which we have in our province, we've doubled it, making sure that more businesses have opportunities to grow and thrive and meet the glowing competitiveness that we're seeing around the world. So this fund helps more businesses reach more trade shows, investors, business partners in different parts of the world. And so we're not putting all of our eggs in the United States of America basket. That's an important relationship, and we're hoping to foster a strong, positive relationship, which is why we have a U.S. representative in Washington, Mr. Madden. But it's also why we are investing in growing in other areas. And so we've certainly had an eye to how do we grow in Europe? How do we grow in Asia? How do we grow in India and among many other places around the world? How do we grow in Mexico and as well throughout South America and Africa as well? So we are not just stopping with the United States in terms of how we approach diversification and the expansion to our export support program. The doubling of our export support program shows that we are taking the steps to ensure that more Manitoba businesses can reach those global markets. So we'll continue to diversify. Going back to our earlier conversation from today, Port of Churchill is another aspect that helps more businesses diversify. And instead of finding that our best bet is to ship our products just to the United States or just out to Port of Vancouver, we want to invest in a new port that can allow more opportunities for businesses to get to Europe faster, get to our partners around the world more cost effectively. And so we'll advance both our work in the Washington trade rep with our officer there, Mr. Madden. We will work to diversify our economy through programming like our export support programming as well. We will continue to advance the Port of Churchill as an effort to both grow our economy in real and meaningful ways with First Nations, Métis, and Northern partners and federal government, but also with an eye to growing our exports from southern Manitoba and the west of Canada, and ensuring that we can diversify through port infrastructure and meet the needs that we're seeing in this growing global competitiveness, so that Manitoba doesn't get left behind and that we can continue to advance and move ahead.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and I'd like to thank the Minister for actually answering the question clearly and then moving on to the long drawn-out preamble. Or I guess post-amble. Yeah, post-amble. So I appreciate that. And as long as I get answers, I'll sit through listening to the Minister. So we'd heard in one of the other sessions of this committee a couple weeks ago from the Minister the impact that tariffs have had on the Manitoba economy, directly through manufacturers seeing disruption. I tried to get some clarification. We didn't actually see any big changes directly to CUSMA, but the Minister had explained to the committee that it was more so the uncertainty that has created disruptions, and that's affected manufacturers in Manitoba and trade for products that we have. And today, again, the Minister highlighted that 70 to 75% of trade for Manitoba is done through the United States. And that's where Mr. Madden is representing us and representing, I would hope, representing those companies who do business here in Manitoba. So I'd like to know if there are any examples, even one would probably satisfy myself and the Manitobans that I represent, to know that, to highlight, to showcase the value that Mr. Madden has to trade in our province, just outside of the conversations that he's able to have with government officials in the United States. So again, to clarify, would the Minister be able to highlight any new trade deals that Mr. Madden has been able to provide to Manitoba businesses, whether they be manufacturers, producers of goods. We ship a lot of agriculture products to the United States. We've seen some disruption there, that the volume of sales has scaled back, and individual companies have made contact with producers in Manitoba, whether it be value-added agriculture processing, hog production, some of the weanling demand that we've seen out of the United States. There's renewed demand in industries outside of what we had normally traded, and I'd just like to know if Mr. Madden has provided any new trade deals or any new markets.
Thank you, member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade and Job Creation.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And it's an important question from member opposite, so I really appreciate it. Yeah, we definitely want to be seeing the impact of the resources we spend in any area of government, and particularly in this department. We really value the ability to show that our government is serious about growing our economy, and we're doing so in a way that grows jobs, does it to strengthen our exports, become more competitive, grow in terms of more equity and more people getting the skills to involve and be part of our workforce, but also understanding that we've got to also increase our competitiveness within the world. And so we're going to continue to do that work. We have been doing that, and Richard Madden, our rep in Washington, is doing that. Mr. Madden has certainly had a role to play in growing our economy, working with businesses in specific sectors. Now, I want to make two clarifications and 2 points for the member opposite. One, it's not our role necessarily to be making trade deals, as in like a new trade deal the way a federal minister would or a federal prime minister would be doing that. We certainly play roles in shepherding companies who can then grow and make an arrangement to a new sale or a new opportunity, increasing our market share. I hope member opposite gets a kind of picture that our role is not the federal government's role, which to actually sign deals like creating a new free trade agreement with another country or state, something like that. So I just want to make sure member opposite has that awareness of what he would expect from any role. That's not our role as a province. A second point I want to make is that, yes, very clearly there has been an increase in our exports in some key areas, I think as a result of the work that's been happening from Richard Madden. I know he's been doing an extensive amount of work in our transportation and industry, so specifically with companies like New Flyer that have been advancing their sales and exports to the United States, specifically in areas like hogs. A number of work has been happening on that area as well in our aerospace sector. And those are some of the key areas that are very big in Manitoba that he's been doing some very specific work. And so while I wouldn't want to get in the way of any private companies' sales or forecasts or anything like that, I can tell you broad numbers from our economy that we've seen the proof that there has been actual increases. And I don't want to get in the way of any private sector announcements or private sector forecasts or deals that may be, not for public consumption, but I would say certainly there has been positive impact as a result of the direct sectors that Mr. Madden has been working in over his time in his role. And so to that end, I'll just give you some of the stats that we have on Manitoba's exports to the United States. And these are key areas where he knows he's been working in. And so in the buses and other public transportation passenger vehicles, those exports from Manitoba to the United States have increased by 32.6% since he's been in his role. We've also seen in another area, the two other areas I want to point out to is in aerospace, aircraft, and in live swine, so hog industry. Aircraft, spacecraft, and other parts thereof. That sector has grown by 49.4%. This is 24 to 25, so during his time in role. And in live swine, we've also seen an increase there of 24.3%. So we're seeing some significant increases of our exports during his time as being our representative. Goes to show that the work he's making to lobby officials, to introduce business connections on both sides of the borders are actually having a real impact on our economy, helping us to increase our exports with our largest trading partner in the United States of America.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you to the Minister for highlighting some of that and stating his impression with the results that Mr. Madden has been gaining for Manitoba. I'd like to clarify. I was hoping to move on, but I think we need to clarify because I was wanting, in one of my previous questions, wanting to have the minister highlight exactly his role, right? And that was a question, we didn't really see that other than his role was to work at representing Manitoba to different government officials in the United States, specifically in Washington, at a federal level in the United States. And as much as I took that answer at face value, it then was clarified in the last answer, which I think everyone realizes that trade representative for Manitoba, a specific province in our country, wouldn't be negotiating actual country-to-country trade deals or specific industry carve-outs or trade negotiations. So, I would hope that the results are more specific to industry or company. But in a previous answer, the minister had said that his role was to build relationships with the government in the United States. So two very different examples were provided in the last response to my question. Highlighted an increase to transportation, used New Flyer as an example, and aerospace, which I can understand that those two may be linked to negotiations with government in Mr. Madden's role, because both those industries are usually the buses, city transport buses, as well as aerospace products would be something that government would buy, whether that be municipal counties, cities, or the federal government, and then in aerospace, the federal government. And then he also highlighted live pork increases, and that's a direct result of Richard Madden's work in the U.S., which would be a private sector change to industry demand. Pork isn't bought by a government or a town or a city. That's bought by a packer in the private sector. So I'd like the minister to clarify whether or not, again, going back to what Mr. Madden's role is that he in fact is negotiating on behalf of Manitoba agriculture corporations, because there's private corporations that own pork production in Manitoba, and then there's public demand for our transportation products, New Flyer buses as an example, or the aerospace industry. So Richard Madden's, the expectation of his role is both to negotiate with public industry as well as government entity.
Thank you, member. Minister of Business, Mining, Trade, and Job Creation.
I appreciate the member opposite. I think his last question, was a little bit confusing. I'm just struggling to understand the role. I think I said his role, which explains it fairly clearly. I'll repeat it again. A couple of the points I said in my answer a couple of responses ago is that the Washington, D.C. office will develop relationships with U.S. lawmakers, industry leaders, trade officials to promote strong ties with Manitoba, ensure that Manitoba's interests are protected in high-level conversations, particularly around negotiations of Canada, U.S., Mexico agreements. His role as the senior representative in the United States is to build stronger relationships with key U.S. lawmakers, industry leaders, trade officials to promote durable ties and prosperous linkages between Manitoba and the U.S. So in both of those answers, which I previously stated, my answers describe both the role that talks and builds strong relationships with lawmakers, because we know they're influential in the policy decisions that impact Manitoba businesses. And at the same time, he's building key relationships with industry leaders in the private sector to help link the Canadian and Manitoba private sector businesses with U.S. private sector businesses. I said that in the job description of Mr. Madden, and quite frankly, it explains why makes sense to have him in a role, who is someone who can open the doors and can have the good relationships with folks on Capitol Hill in Washington, and in the people who are in the House and people who are in the Senate there, and with people in the White House. And at the same time, he has the ability to work with key industries in Manitoba and make those links with their U.S. counterparts, whether that's pork going to Iowa, or whether that is manufacturers that have connections to Atlanta, to folks in Georgia, or whether that's anyone who's doing business throughout the United States, whether that's in Illinois or in Minnesota. So these are examples of the roles that he plays both on the policy advocacy piece and the business connection, and that's why he's the right person for the job, who has experience connecting with Manitoba, understands our province, has worked to gain a fulsome understanding of our business community here, working and knowing our business leaders right here in Manitoba, and take that expertise, matching it up with his Rolodex, physical or virtual Rolodex, that he has in Washington, and advocating for Manitoba's best interests, both on the policy side with U.S. lawmakers and with the business interest side. And so both the results that he's had to open doors on the policy level are significant, and on the business side is significant, proven out by the results I said in my last response. So I think it's proven that what I'm demonstrating to you and to Manitobans is that the steps we're taking is to grow our economy in a wholesome way in Manitoba, certainly a no stone left unturned approach, and making sure that we put our best foot story. Now, we know, Manitobans know we've got a great story to tell, a story that is very powerful for international business and landscapes to understand. And so we will continue to tell the story. Mr. Madden in Washington plays a role in telling that story and shaping how people understand Manitoba, so they don't make policy without understanding the impacts that it has on a province that has many industry sectors that are very much intertwined with U.S. states. And so as we continue to advance our conversations with our largest trading partner, Mr. Madden in his role will continue to play a large part of that.
Thank you, Minister. Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Looking at time being only approximately 7 minutes left in the day, and not nearly getting the answers that I was hoping to out of this committee's process. We've highlighted a number of different areas of concern in the budget. We all know across the province, but definitely on the opposition side of the House, the great potential that Manitoba has to be a nation leader, not the largest per capita recipient of transfer payments. It's something that I highlighted in past sessions of this committee, that we truly believe that whether it be goods from across Canada being exported through our Port of Churchill, whether it be expanding trade to our largest trade partner in the United States, unlocking the resources that we have throughout the entire northern region of our province, or truly capitalizing on the entrepreneurial strength manufacturing capacity, and in general, just strong economic position of southern Manitoba in general. We've got a lot to offer in Manitoba, and a lot of potential to not only turn our province into a more prosperous place for all Manitobans, to increase the affordability and economic position of each of the families in our province, but truly lead our country and for once contribute to the prosperity of people across our country. I think it's our duty to the rest of the country as we sit on so much possibility for economic strength here in Manitoba, that we should be providing that strength to all Manitobans and all Canadians. But unfortunately, we're seeing some concerning statistics highlighted through not only this year's budget, but in alarms that are being set off by industry leaders and Manitobans that are struggling each and every day when they go to the grocery store. Last August alone, Manitoba lost 4,000 manufacturing jobs, and the manufacturing sector of the province has dropped by 30% under this minister. So since we're not able to get any clear answers, I think that concludes the questions that I'll ask in committee, and I'd ask to wrap up this session.
Honourable Minister.
We are growing our economy. Our GDP is in line with other national average. We're #1 in job growth in the country. We're advancing the Port of Churchill. And if a member opposite let us pass our budget without delay this year, we'll deliver on the affordability with PST off all grocery prices for Manitobans.
Thank you, Minister. Seeing no further questions, we shall now proceed to put the question on the resolutions. Resolution 10.2, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum of not exceeding $34,090,000 for business, mining, trade and job creation, investment and trade for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 10.3, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $145,161,000 for business, mining, trade and job creation, workforce development and training for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 10.4, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $13,939,000 for business, mining, trade and job creation, minerals, petroleum and geoscience for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 10.5, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $570,000 for business, mining, trade and job creation, capital assets for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass?
Pass.
The resolution is accordingly passed. Resolution 10.6, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $60 million for business, mining, trade and job creation, loans and grantees programs for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed. The last item to be considered for the estimates for this department is item 10.1 bracket A, the minister's salary contained in resolution 10.1.
Let's see this.
The floor is open for questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No, just
Resolution 10.1, resolved that there be granted to His Majesty a sum not exceeding $6,272,000 for business, mining, trade, and job creation, administration, and finance for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2027. Shall the resolution pass? The resolution is accordingly passed.
Let's just wait.
This concludes the matter for this committee. The time being 5 p.m., I am interrupting the proceedings. The Committee of Supply will recess until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.